Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're diving into this article that really caught my eye. Humans have to stop being human.
Just the title alone makes you think, right?
It definitely grabs your attention. It's a provocative idea for sure, this whole notion that our very humanness might be, well, our downfall.
So before we, start panicking and thinking this is some kind of like doomsday scenario, the article isn't saying we need to literally stop existing.
Thankfully, no. It's more about a fundamental shift in our, I guess you could say, our mindset, our behaviors.
Yeah.
Almost like a software upgrade for humanity.
Right. Like we're running on outdated software.
Exactly. The article uses this really interesting metaphor. Imagine, like, running software designed for hunter-gatherers on a computer that's powerful enough to, I don't know, split atoms or something. That's kind of where we're at. Our brains are still wired for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Okay, I see what you mean. Like, our instincts were honed for survival in a completely different environment. Back then, if you saw a saber-toothed tiger, you didn't have time to, sit down and contemplate the meaning of life. It was all about immediate action, immediate needs.
Exactly. Those instincts, like you said, immediate gratification, tribalism, they were essential for survival for a really long time. But now we're dealing with these massive global problems like climate change, pandemics, things that require long-term thinking and, well, global cooperation. Our old programming just isn't cutting it.
So it's almost like we're caught in this time warp. Our ancient instincts are clashing with the complexity of the modern world. So what's the solution? Does the article, offer a way out of this mess?
It does. It proposes this three-pronged approach to, I guess you could say, stop being human in those ways that are holding us back. And those three areas are, first, becoming stewards of the earth. Second is upgrading our mental and emotional operating systems. And the third is redefining our purpose as a species.
Okay, those are pretty big ideas. Let's break those down a bit. Starting with this whole stewards of the earth thing. It sounds nice, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Right. It's about a pretty big mindset shift. Instead of seeing ourselves as, separate from nature or worse, conquerors of it, we need to start seeing ourselves as, part of a larger ecosystem. We need to start acting like responsible members of that ecosystem, not just exploiters.
So it's less about saving the planet and more about understanding that, our own survival depends on a healthy planet.
Yeah.
That we're all connected.
Exactly. The article paints this vivid picture. Imagine seeing forests as climate stabilizers, oceans as the lungs of the planet. It's about understanding that, harming the planet is ultimately harming ourselves.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like a reminder that, we're not just inhabitants of Earth, but active participants in its health and, its fate.
And that brings us to the second aspect of transformation, upgrading our mental and emotional operating systems. Because even if we, grasp the idea of stewardship intellectually, we still need the tools to actually make those changes happen.
Right. Because it's one thing to, say, hey, we should stop polluting the oceans, and another to actually get billions of people to change their behavior. So how do we actually upgrade our thinking? What does that even look like?
The article really emphasizes the importance of education, but not just any education, not just, memorizing facts and figures. We need education that cultivates critical thinking, systems thinking, and emotional intelligence.
Whoa, hold on. Those are some pretty big words. Can you break those down a bit? What would that kind of education actually look like in a classroom setting?
Well, imagine, from a young age, we were taught to see the interconnectedness of things. How our actions have ripple effects. We'd learn how to analyze information critically, to spot biases, and to really think about those long-term consequences of our choices.
It would be like raising generations of problem solvers and collaborators, not just, consumers and competitors.
Exactly. And this kind of education, it's not just for kids. The article also talks about the potential of mindfulness practices to help rewire our brains, even as adults.
Mindfulness. Okay, for someone who's, never tried it, what exactly is that? Is it like meditation or something?
Kind of. It's like a type of mental training that helps you become more aware of your thoughts, emotions, and even, physical sensations in the present moment. And you do all this without judgment, just observing.
So instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media or getting caught up in an argument, mindfulness would help you pause, reflect, and maybe make a more conscious choice.
Yeah, exactly. It's about rewiring your brain to be more intentional, less reactive. And get this, the article even talks about the potential of brain-computer interfaces to, accelerate this whole process.
Wait, hold on. Brain-computer interfaces. Are we talking about plugging into the matrix to become better humans?
It might sound like science fiction, but the technology is advancing so rapidly. The idea is that these interfaces could, like, enhance our cognitive abilities, help us focus better, even boost our empathy and compassion.
Wow. That's both fascinating and, I gotta say, a little bit scary. I mean, messing with the human brain seems like a pretty big deal.
Oh, it is, definitely. The article, acknowledges all the ethical concerns and really emphasizes that any kind of technological intervention needs to be approached carefully. We have to focus on collective well-being, not just, individual gain.
Right, we don't want to create some kind of dystopia in the pursuit of like a utopia or something. Okay, so we've talked about becoming stewards of the earth and upgrading our mental and emotional software. What was that third area of transformation again? The one we haven't really dug into yet.
Ah, yes, that's a big one. Redefining our purpose. The article asks this really profound question. What is the ultimate goal of humanity? What are we even striving for?
That is a big question and a really important one. Is it just about, endless economic growth like we've been told for so long? Or is there something more, well, more profound, something more aligned with this whole idea of being stewards of the earth and, upgrading our mental and emotional software?
That's the heart of the matter, right? The article really challenges us to question this assumption that endless growth is, sustainable or even desirable. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, our purpose is something else entirely. Something more about like nurturing life, fostering connection, evolving into a species that acts as one, kind of like a single coordinated organism instead of a bunch of competing factions.
Okay, now my brain is officially starting to hurt. But in a good way, I think. It's a lot to take in, this idea of humanity acting as one. It makes you question, well, pretty much everything. How would we govern ourselves? How would we interact with each other and the planet? It's a whole new way of thinking about, well, everything.
And that's exactly the point of this whole deep dive, right? To get us thinking about these big, complex codons and how they might shape the future. To, like, stretch our imaginations a bit and, like, consider possibilities we might not have thought of before.
So it's less about finding all the answers right now and more about, I guess, sparking curiosity and encouraging, like, deeper reflection.
Exactly. It's about opening up new avenues of thought, new ways of seeing the world and our place in it.
Okay, before we keep going, I want to throw a question out to you listeners. Think about this. If you could redesign humanity's operating system, what features would you prioritize?
It really is mind-boggling, isn't it? Like, what upgrades would we install in Humanity 2.0, if we could actually re-engineer ourselves?
It is, and the article makes it clear that this isn't just some theoretical discussion. We're at a real crossroads,
Right.
and the choices we make now are going to have huge consequences.
Yeah, totally. I think the article captures that tension really well between our amazing potential as humans and, those self-destructive patterns that we just can't seem to shake. We've accomplished incredible things, but we also keep making the same mistakes over and over.
Like, the article talks about how every solution seems to create a whole new set of problems.
Hmm.
We think we're moving forward, but then, bam, new challenges pop up.
Right. It's like a never-ending cycle. Like, think about agriculture. It allowed civilizations to flourish, but it also led to overpopulation and, put a huge strain on the environment. Or the Industrial Revolution. Amazing progress, but also pollution, resource depletion.
And even the internet, which has connected the whole world, has also led to things like information overload and like echo chambers where people just hear what they already agree with. It's wild.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly trying to catch up with the consequences of our own ingenuity. So how do we break free from this cycle? How do we actually stop being human in a way that leads to a better future?
Right. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the scale of the problem.
Hey.
So the article, does it offer any practical solutions?
It does. And that's where those 3 areas of transformation we talked about come in. Becoming stewards of the earth, upgrading our mental and emotional operating systems, and redefining our purpose as a species. We've already touched on the first 2, so let's dive into that third one.
Okay, yeah, redefining our purpose. This is where things get really interesting, I think. For so long, we've been told that progress equals economic growth, more stuff, more technology. But is that really like the ultimate goal of humanity? Is that really what's best for us and the planet in the long run?
The article really punches back on that idea. It suggests that maybe our purpose is something completely different. It's about becoming caretakers, nurturing life, and evolving into a species that acts as a single coordinated organism.
Wow, a single organism. That's a powerful image. It makes you think, like, what would a unified humanity even look like? How would we make decisions? How would we govern ourselves?
Exactly. It's a total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It forces us to imagine new systems, new ways of relating to each other and the planet. We have to think outside those old, outdated boxes that aren't serving us anymore.
It's like rewiring humanity on a massive scale, a global awakening of sorts.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing, but also like incredibly daunting. How do we even start to make such a huge shift? It feels so overwhelming.
I get it. It's a monumental task for sure. But the article emphasizes that it doesn't have to happen all at once. It's about taking those first steps individually and collectively, however small they may seem.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are some practical things we can do in our everyday lives to, actually contribute to this transformation?
Well, on a personal level, it could be as simple as practicing mindfulness, being more aware of our consumption habits, choosing to engage in, meaningful dialogue with people who have different perspectives. Even those small shifts can make a difference.
It's about shifting our mindset from what's in it for me to how can I contribute?
Right, exactly. But of course, personal change is only part of the equation.
Right.
We also need systemic change. We need to rethink our economic models, prioritize well-being over profits, and invest in education that cultivates critical thinking and a sense of, global citizenship.
So we need to change the rules of the game. Because right now it seems like the system is set up for, self-destruction.
It's true. It's going to be a tough battle. But history shows us that humans are capable of incredible change when we set our minds to it.
Think about the end of slavery, the fight for civil rights, the development of vaccines that have saved countless lives. We've overcome huge challenges when we work together with a shared purpose.
Exactly. So maybe this is our next great challenge, to collectively stop being human in those ways that are holding us back and create a future that's truly worthy of our potential.
It's definitely a challenge worth taking on. And it's not about reaching some perfect state of being, right? It's about continuous evolution, learning, and adapting as we go.
You got it. It's about embracing the process of transformation, both as individuals and as a species.
That's actually a really hopeful thought, It reminds us that we're not stuck, that we have the power to change and grow.
Exactly. And with that in mind, here's something to think about before we continue. What do you see as the biggest obstacle to this transformation? What's holding us back from becoming the best version of ourselves as a species?
All right, deep divers, we're back. And I hope you've had some time to really ponder that question.
Yeah.
What is the biggest thing holding us back from making this evolutionary leap?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, there's so many factors at play. It's not just one single thing, right?
Right. The article talks about those destructive aspects of human nature that we need to unlearn or overcome. But it's easier said than done, right? I mean, how do we actually change those deeply ingrained patterns of behavior?
Yeah, it's not like we can just flip a switch and suddenly become these, enlightened beings. It takes a lot of effort and awareness, both on an individual and a collective level.
So we need to change our own habits and mindsets, but we also need to change the systems that are reinforcing those old patterns, right?
Exactly. It's a two-pronged approach. We need to work on ourselves, but we also need to create a world where those destructive behaviors aren't rewarded anymore.
Earlier, we talked about things like education and mindfulness as potential tools for rewiring our thinking. But I'm curious, are those enough? Do we need something more? I mean, do we need to fundamentally change the systems that are driving those destructive behaviors, like our economic systems, our political systems, the whole shebang?
It's a big question, and the article definitely points to the need for some serious systemic overhaul. We can't just keep tweaking things around the edges, right? We need to rethink the whole game.
So how do we do that? I mean, where do we even begin? It's such a massive undertaking. It can feel kind of overwhelming,
It is, but remember, every big change starts with small steps, right? And I think the article really emphasizes the importance of both individual and collective action.
So we need people who are willing to, do the inner work to change their own habits and mindsets, but we also need people who are willing to fight for those bigger systemic changes.
Exactly. It's a multi-pronged approach, like I said, and it requires courage, vision, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
And I think that's where this idea of redefining our purpose comes in. If we're going to create a world where those destructive behaviors aren't rewarded, we need a new vision of what success looks like, right? A vision that's not based on endless growth and consumption, but something more aligned with the well-being of the planet and all its inhabitants.
Exactly. It's about shifting our values, our priorities, our whole way of being in the world.
It sounds like a pretty radical shift, but I got to say, it's also incredibly exciting to think about. To imagine a world where we're not just surviving, but actually thriving in a way that's sustainable and equitable.
It is exciting, isn't it? It's like a whole new horizon of possibilities opens up when we start to think this way.
But the big question is, can we actually pull it off? Can we actually make this evolutionary leap? I mean, the article acknowledges that there are some massive challenges ahead.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There are huge obstacles, both internal and external. But, you know, humans have a history of overcoming seemingly impossible odds, right? We've done some pretty incredible things when we set our minds to it.
Right. I mean, we put people on the moon, we eradicated diseases, we created technologies that connect billions of people across the globe. So maybe, just maybe, we can add rewiring humanity to that list of incredible feats.
And that's what's so inspiring about this whole conversation, right? It reminds us that we have the power to shape our own destiny. We're not just passive bystanders. We can actually make a difference.
Well, on that note of hopeful possibility deep divers, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, we want to leave you with one final thought. What small step can you take today to contribute to this transformation? What seed can you plant? What spark can you ignite? The future, as always, is in our hands. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep diving deep.